Yeah, I think you're slowly shifting to the cap and trade system. The cap and trade system in Canada has been also very controversial back in 2017 when the premiers were changing when during the elections. Kathleen Wynne, who was the Premier of Ontario until 2017, right before Doug Ford came into power, she had the system in place. And by the way, Quebec still has this system in place as of 2025. So eventually, what cap and trade system did, or the way it was introduced, is that if you have, let's say, an industry that was working and producing a lot of carbon emissions, um, in that case, they had to be they had to disclose that to the province, and there was a cap that was set on these industries, on these businesses, in terms of how much carbon emissions can they really emit, and if they went over that limit, before, what used to happen, and some most of the countries as well, they would get new permits, or they would have to be able to apply for new permits from the government, from the or provincial government in this place. And what Kathleen Wynne did, she stopped giving out those permits, and what she did is something in line with Trudeau's messaging in terms of carbon pricing. What that means is, if let's say you own an industry and you are producing a certain amount of carbon emissions, and let's say you are producing even more greater quantity because apparently now you have too many buyers of the product that you're manufacturing. Well, if you have more carbon emissions producing from your factory, you cannot buy more, or you cannot apply for a new permit from the provincial government, or you cannot try to apply for a new permit from the provincial government. What you would have to do instead is reach out to another business, and if they are producing carbon emissions less than what you are, you would have to buy excess permits that they do not need, since they won't be reaching to that cap, and you can use their permits. You have to buy their permits, and you can use their permits for you to be able to produce more. And what businesses were doing, they were reselling these permits for a greater price. Now, granted, this was bringing in additional revenue to the province, but again, this was hurting the industries. If one business is selling, the other industry has to be buying that for a greater cost, because there was no cap set. There was a cap set on the carbon emission that you were producing, but there was no cap set on how much you can resell a permit for. And eventually, when Doug Ford came into power in 2018, that is the first thing that he chopped down. He took out the cap and trade system. And I actually think that that is not a very bad thing that he did there. Quebec is still doing the cap and trade system in line with the Trudeau carbon pricing, but I still think industries are far better situation in a far better place right now without the cap and trade system.
I see there have been changes with the current Doug Ford's government, and compare that to David Abbey from British Columbia. David Abbey has been expanding their trades training, which in turn is having their own in-house training for the tradesmen to complete, have apprenticeship in place, and they are developing the skill labor in that terms. On a Doug Ford's aspect, I see that they are launching funding to have new and targeted skill set of workers in special trades where they need the most out of employment in.
During COVID, I don't think a lot of people remember this, and some even might. The the bigger issue that was emerging was a shortage of skilled labor. I think we have a lot of people in coming into Canada, and given the $2,000 checks that the government was giving out under the CERB and CRB plans, there were a lot more people in other countries who were extremely interested in coming into Canada. But all those people, all the influx of that people who is deciding or who's coming into Canada, well, you never know who might be skilled enough to be able to take the industries to a next level. Um, low low unemployment, especially in skilled trades, that is something which is going to hurt businesses even more. Talk about quality versus quantity. I think this is not a time we should be talking about quantity. I think this is a time that we should be talking about the quality. in the period of 2022 and 2023, the government said, okay, the workforce that we currently have in Canada is an aging workforce, and we need to let more people come into Canada. And as a result, a lot of people did came in Canada within that period, but a lot of people that did came into in Canada under the immigration programs were not skilled enough. And that is something I have an issue for, because all these unskilled people who are coming into Canada, rather than starting their own businesses, they are going into existing warehouses, existing businesses, and they are doing low-level jobs, which is not going to contribute to the productivity of the overall landscape in the country. Now, you need a skilled labor, you need a skilled workforce who can actually come up with brand new ideas that people in Canada have not come up with, where they're coming on shorting. And you need to look at some other province as well. If the federal government is not coming out with some unique creative and innovative ideas onto how to implement the immigration policies, you should take some examples from some provinces, for example, Saskatchewan, who are creating some really interesting provincial nominee programs where they're letting in more skilled labor for them to be able to increase the productivity of the province.
When they pass rules and regulations on capping out how many immigrants they are bringing in, provinces have their own quotas to see how much of a labor shortages they have in their own province based on skill sets. When we are talking about high skilled labor, I think you're going on the right direction where you're pointing out various skill set or unskilled labor like general labor or task that you do not need a certificate in. Few of the high skill labors could be named as tradespeople, say mechanics, electricians, plumbing. All of these scenarios, along with furthermore, they all consider as skilled labors. However, we see we are bringing in less skilled labor because we had policies in place that were that bounded for example, the express entry. You were it wasn't designated so much on the variance in what skill set you have, but it was more based on a point system which you could acquire based on how much education you have, how much experience in a workplace you have. All of those scenarios ended up increasing our labor, but it increased our labor in the non-skilled workforce, which we were already having a lot in. Now, skilled labor shortages were there. There could be some changes that we can do. For example, just talking about it, we could implement few programs. Now, provinces are doing it already, but we could push forward on more skill labor merit based system. Which I mean is, for example, if province is already lagging in electricians, that's the only trade they look out for first to fill it out. Now, I'm not saying that's the only trade they should look out for. What I'm trying to represent is they should narrow it down based on what skill set, what employment data they have, and how much open jobs that they have in the market and how much they are supposed to fill. Now, there's two pathways you could choose from. You increase a skill labor force from all the international countries that we have, which is immigration to us. Or second is you increase the funding in the domestic land. You create more funds available for, or more incentives for the residents to take part in the labor market or the labor force. That way they have a incentive in place to learn a new skill, a new set, even tradespeople, which the governments and provinces are already doing it. And I see that could be a good direction to the next economic growth for Canada in.
Yeah, the growth of the country is what everybody is striving for right now, Sunny. And I think the way the government currently issued the immigration system, uh, I really do not agree with how they handle the immigration system in Canada. I think they could have done a much better job in terms of unskilled and skilled labor. But you have to control the levels of immigration, levels of people, the amount of people that you're letting into the country. And I think it's going to be really interesting if we do see um, the elections in October, how they turn out, if we have the new leader from Liberal government continuing his position after the October elections as well if he does win the seat, or if Pierre Poilievre comes into power, or somebody from NDP. It's going to be extremely interesting to point out. But uh, check this out, Sunny. The more people you let into the country, if let's say somebody is coming into Western provinces, Northwestern provinces, say Saskatchewan, say Alberta, how long do these new people stay in those provinces, Sunny? I don't think they stay in those provinces very long. Despite them having robust nominee programs, these people, the moment they land into those provinces, from whatever countries they're coming from, they still end up in Ontario. Why is that the case, Sunny? Why is it more and more people on temporary visas coming into Ontario? Could it be for work? Could it be to have a better life? No matter the situation, they are still creating a huge pressure, a stress on the housing, on the healthcare, on the resources that they are squeezing from the province. I mean, the province eventually has to even spend more. I mean, let alone the residents, the citizens of Ontario, of Canada, even the immigrants, even right now, they are not able to buy their first house in Canada. The more people you are welcoming into country, the more people you're bringing into this province, the less amount of housing is going to be available for the existing citizens in Ontario. According to the Canadian Mortgage Housing Corporation report in 2023, just to be able to, just for Canada to be able to restore the affordability in housing, Canada needs to build a 3.5 million more homes by the year 2030. Do you really think Canada has the capacity and ability right now to build 3.5 million more homes in the next year, 5 years? We are living in March 2025. Canada has less than 5 years total to build 3.5 million more homes just for them to be able to restore the affordability for the young Canadians, for everyday citizens. And with the new and high amounts of immigration coming into Canada, that goal seems even more farther away. Even a small 1,500 square feet townhouse, a house is going to cost you somewhere between 450 and $600,000 if you go over the ends. If you live in between in Toronto side, that's going to be even more expensive. But just check on the extreme poles. If you try to buy a small house, 1,500 square feet, even a small condominium, say a one bedroom, one washroom, that is going to cost you somewhere between 450 and $600,000. And if that's just one condominium, that's just one housing unit that's costing you that much, imagine how much 3.5 million homes is going to cost the government of Canada. They are estimating, according to 2023 CMHC report, they are estimating almost $2 trillion that the Canadian government has to spend by the year 2030 just to be able to restore affordability to the citizens. And that is less than 5 years for them to be able to do. And with the new incoming tariffs, especially impacting the aluminum, steel, forestry, and lumber industry, I don't think that is even achievable. I mean, this is why, in my opinion, the Liberal government has done a very reckless job in running the Canadian government. I mean, the overall GDP for the whole country in Canada right now is sitting at less than the complete GDP of just one state in US. I believe that was Texas. I believe it was Texas with the annual GDP in 2022 or 2023, something like this, at sitting at $2.7 trillion versus Canada sitting at $2.2 trillion.
We discussed with the interprovincial rules and regulations, if we were to able somehow take them off and we were to extend the GDP by another 150 or 200 billion, God knows how much, if the reality comes to true, but that's another $200 billion added to a 2.2. Imagine if businesses at that point are growing from province to province,
But
that
again,
we're gonna
Sunny,
grow.
why did the Liberal government not come up with these in the 9 years of government that they are running? Why are they just coming up with these ideas right now? If you are telling me that with the rules and regulations that they're taking down and CFT is going to add another $200 billion to the economy, why did they not come up with these ideas before Trump won? What happened in the last 9 years, 8 years, 7 years, 6 years? Why did the businesses not have that opportunity in the past? That means we had even more opportunity for growth that all of us missed out on.